obviously used to seeing female correspondents on TV, you know, Christiane Amanpour, obviously in print. But I was trying to think of a movie that has a female war journalist as the lead. It's not a thing. It seems not to be a thing.
How did I beat Angelina Jolie to this? Seems like her kind of thing. No, has she done it? No, she hasn't.
I don't think so. And Tina, for you as a producer of the film as well as the star, you felt like you wanted to bring a different kind of character to the screen, as you said, not just a magazine journalist, as needed as those people are in the world.
Yeah.
And tell me why you felt like you needed to do that.
I mean, I just really, as I look to try to grow and learn how to be a producer, I look for stories. I try to make movies that I would want to see, that I myself would want to be there if I went to 68th Street. And so that's really the guiding thing. It can kind of be anything. It can be a dumb movie like Sisters, dumb again in the best possible way, or it could be something like this. And so, yeah, just, you know, I think my friends and I, my comedy friends, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph, we all, you know, before there was a name for the Bechdel test, I think we all had sort of an internal version of like, is this movie stupid or not kind of thing. And so, yeah, I like to work on things where women are talking to other women and they have names and they're not just called like wife and stuff.
Then you get your white male friend to write it.
And then I get my white male friend to write it.
It all comes together.
And then that's how it gets done, because I get scared.
Well, you don't know computers.
And then I get my period and I won't feel good.
The sort of broader idea of coming into this place and losing yourself in this job that is so adrenaline fueled. And a lot of people I know from talking to other war correspondents, friends of mine, that you go into this job not necessarily because you have a perfect life at home. A lot of people go into this kind of work because you're trying to escape something.
Right. Or you're running towards a story as well. I mean, there's something about, like, you know, people always talk about, and I write about the idea of being an adrenaline junkie in the book, and it's also like you're just like a story junkie, and you get hooked on these places. And I think that, like, there's a couple folks in the audience who also covered Afghanistan. And there was something about that country that just got under your skin. It was something about the people there, about, like, how beautiful it was, about watching, like, the West flood into this place and, like, you know, the internet, TV, cell phones, Western-style clothing, you know, into this place that had been kept out for so long. That was just, it was an amazing story. Every day you felt like you were going around and stories were falling off of trees. As a journalist, that's just an energizing environment to be in. You also feel like you're covering things that are about life and death. And you feel so alive as when you're doing that kind of work. You feel like what you're doing really matters. And your dinner parties are talking about, like, the future of countries and what should be done, and all these sort of, you know, really boring minutia about tribal elders and who's got alliances, you know. And then you come back here and it's just like, you know, I was insufferable when I got back. It took like about 2 years before I was not the person who said, $15 for a drink? Do you know what that could buy in Afghanistan? You know, I was super not fun at a party at that point.
But that adrenaline, that sense of adrenaline lifestyle was something that you felt familiar with, Tina.
I mean, in the smallest scale way, you know, because when you try to do something like this, you think, okay, well, if this is a character, what do I have in common? What do I not have in common? How can I relate to this? And for me, the smallest scale way to compare it to working at Saturday Night Live in terms of a job where you throw yourself in completely, you use it as an excuse to avoid any, like, boring parts of your life. You're like, I can't go to my cousin's wedding because I'm kind of a big deal. I'm very busy, you know. And so that was how I tried to relate to it, yeah.
And Robert, did you have that same sense as well?
I found it very interesting, and yeah, sure, I think that's the closest I've ever come to that in terms of being sort of all in on something and the kind of adrenaline of a live show. But I mean, that doesn't compare in any way.
Not even slightly,
yeah, which is why, yeah. But
we risk embarrassment.
Oh, not the writers. So no. But I did find that a very compelling part of Kim's narrative, which is this it's addictive. You're so important. And you're, not to mention the pure adrenaline that you're getting. And more than one person I spoke to, and maybe you talked about this as well, Kim, I apologize in the book, but that addiction of not having to being addicted to not having to live your boring real life.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah. And you don't have to do your laundry. You don't have to worry about like shopping. You don't have to deal with any of that stuff. You don't have to really deal with like your personal life so much.
Yeah, you don't have to go to your like boyfriend's work party.
Yeah, you don't have to do that.
You don't have to go to anyone's like handbag sale in their apartment.
Actually, no, that happened.
Oh, I'm sorry. How is your handbag line doing, by the way?
It's going well. I'm starting it next week. Kim Baker.
Oh,
yeah.
Baker, good.
Yeah. I
Pops.
divorced myself from that. It took a long time to figure out that this was going to be a book. I mean, I was over there doing my job and just trying to tell the story about what was happening in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And it got to a certain point where, Sam Zell bought the newspaper chain, and it became very clear that I might not have a job much longer. He would, in public sort of speeches, he'd say, the Tribune has this correspondent in Afghanistan. I mean, why does the Tribune have a correspondent in Afghanistan? And so I kind of figured I probably didn't have job security. You're going through like the death of like, a certain part of journalism at that period of time, 2008, 2009. And I had started taking notes at a certain point on funny things that I saw and absurd things that I had noticed. Like one of them was like this woman I saw in Karachi walking through the airport, and she was wearing an abaya, full abaya. And she was holding hands with like her 9-year-old son, and he was wearing jeans and a T-shirt that said "No money, no honey." And I kind of felt like, well, that's Pakistan. I mean, just right there. And so I started taking notes on this stuff, and I also felt like the absurd way we were living over there. It's like you're basically in a frat party situation, and you're like in college all over again, and everybody's sort of single there, even if they're not single, and it's like this weird sort of pressure cooker lifestyle, and we had always talked about writing a funny book. Like one of us was going to write a darkly comic book and a dark look at it. And I loved Joseph Heller, and I loved MASH, and so the last year I was over there, I kind of figured, let's try to update MASH and see if it's actually a possibility.
Tina and Robert, when you started the process of adapting this book, well, tell the story of how the book got to you, first of all.
Well, it's a somewhat embarrassing story because basically my agent forwarded me the Times review of the book, and Michiko Kakutani had referred to Kim as sort of a Tina Fey type character, and because I'm an egomaniac and a moron, I was like, I'm going to read that book, and so I got hold of the book, and then I thought it was really funny and intelligent, and again, to see something that was so funny set in this extreme environment. I'm always looking for something that could be a movie where I'm not a lady who works at a magazine, who's like a
Not that there's anything wrong with working.
No, just in movies. It's played out as a movie convention, as a movie convention. And so I took the book to Lauren and to Robert pretty much at the same time and said, do you think we could sell this somewhere?
And Robert, so you then picked up a copy of the book.
I did, and I read some of it. No, I did, and read it with great gusto. I mean, it is very funny and very specific. And when you're looking to write comedy, when you're looking to write anything, specificity is what you're looking for. I think what Tina's referring to of women working at magazines, which are great. But there's become a lack of specificity to that kind of take, and this was such a new kind of aperture onto a world we'd heard a lot about and read a lot about, but it allowed us to laugh about it, allowed us to look at the absurdities, some of them tragic absurdities, and that felt so fresh. And then I had to figure out how to make Kim's life interesting. Which I say completely facetiously, I just had to make it into a movie, which is to make it less interesting, really, is to take away so much and to add these sort of structural things that, so it was with great trepidation that I undertook all of that, especially since it was someone's life.
Did you have any trepidation, or were you immediately excited about this prospect?
Oh, no, I mean, I have no trepidation whatsoever throughout life. I mean, I went to Afghanistan, for God's sake. I'm like, oh, this will be a new adventure.